Okay, we should be live. I was just jamming out to that little 30-second intro. It was pretty lit. So, Heidi ho, Twitch land. My name is Justin King, and I will be hosting your panel for tonight, or today, or the afternoon, because we are international online. I would love if you are watching the video to put in the little comments where you're from, and if you are some type of minority, because we're talking about diversity, put that in too. I myself am from Houston, Texas, and I have a lot of minorities. I am genderqueer, so I am a gender minority. I'm asexual, so I am a sexuality minority. As you can tell by the color of my skin, I am breaking it down more specific. I am Native American mixed with people who are stolen from North Africa, a descendant of slavery, and I am also part Mexican. So I am also an ethnic / race minority. And when it comes to Lolita, I'm a minority because of those racial and ethnic minorities I just mentioned, but also because if you can't tell by a little bit of the shape of me, I am plus size. I am not a small person. And I am currently 34, which means that I am one of the older Lolitas. I can remember back in the day when LiveJournal was the only way that you could communicate with other people, that most people in the fashion that were in the West Side had this weird idea. It's not an idea right now on Facebook and Instagram, so I am blessed that they stopped doing that. But back in the day, there was this idea that in high school and college, you're going to be a Lolita. But near the end of college, and when you grow up and you have to get a real job, that you're going to move from being a Lolita to doing Otomi or gal stuff. And that was it. There was this conception that after a certain age, you're just not going to do Lolita anymore. And I believe a part of that came from what we were deeming that people in Japan were doing based on the little information that we got at the time, which I can understand if they do that over there, but here on the Western side, that really doesn't make sense. So those are my identities that are minorities. I would again love if you could put in the chat what country are you part of, or if you're in the United States, what state or city you're in, and what your minorities are as well. I want to make this as interactive as possible. And I want to start off by saying that today is Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth to all my people who were descendants of slavery, because that includes more than just people from Africa, and especially those who are also in Texas like I am. Happy Juneteenth to you as well. For those of you who are watching and don't know, Juneteenth is recently a federal holiday, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm personally not into that, since that includes white people, but white people were the people who enslaved us. So I don't know if white people deserve a day off, but it is a holiday because here in Galveston, only about, I'd say 2 or 3 hours away from where I live, people didn't know that slavery was officially deemed as illegal in the United States and no more. And back then, there were a lot of people who, once emancipation happened, grabbed their slaves and took them down to Texas because they knew that they could avoid having to let them be free. So Juneteenth was the day that here in Galveston, they were like, we're not doing that anymore. All you people who are traveling down here, all you people who already lived here, let these people go. And I want to do a fun fact that they actually had other slaves that were still enslaved at this time. And that Juneteenth was not the end all be all like some people make it seem. Some people still were being enslaved by white people until after the fact. So this is just kind of how, on a sidetrack, the Tulsa massacre is that now it's getting more awareness due to what is on TV. However, there were other massacres that went on as well that are just important, kind of like that. But it is Juneteenth. That's what this magical event is. And what better way to celebrate that than bring the intersections of diversity and Lolita together. And because it's kind of like a for the people kind of holiday, I want to make this interactive. So that's why if you feel chatty, you can always go over to the stream chat and type what I asked, any questions or any feedback that you have. This is going to be a real chill panel. It's not going to be very instructional. So moving from Juneteenth and what's going on right now, I want to start off with what is diversity and why is it important? So I'm going to talk about this like you don't know what's going on and maybe you're like a teenager, and I want to be that explicit because I don't know the level of understanding of everyone that's watching. Sometimes people that watch are very educated in these topics, and others just know what they learned in school, which is really a tip of a huge, huge iceberg. So going on to what diversity is basically acknowledging that there are many different types of people in the world, and those types of people have many different identities connected to them. And because there are so many different people, there are many different things that people are inherently born with that they can't change. And it's acknowledging that we are not all one group of people. It's also not doing what some people say, which is, I don't see XYZ. I just see you, or I just see a person. Because when you say that, you are actually erasing those parts of the people that they can't change, or the parts of the culture that is a part of who they are or were, or the people that they were taken from were. And it is saying you actually exist and all those different things exist. And it then breaks down different ways that people are, and different ways people are grown up into, and different ways people find their culture and community and talk about. Now, diversity does not include, I am into Lolita. It is a fashion from Japan. And because I am wearing something that America usually does not wear, I am a minority. That's not how it goes. That's not how it works. Fashion is a piece of clothing that you can choose to put on and off. And I do notice that there are some people that get into the Japanese street fashions, and then they get into the pop culture, and then they get into the music, and they really get into learning about Japan, and sometimes say, oh, well, because I'm really into Japan and Japanese stuff, but I'm not from there, I am a minority. That doesn't work that way. If you ever see people like that, usually these are people not of color. But if you do see people like that, please tell them that you are not a minority and you are just a regular person into Japanese stuff, into Lolita fashion. And what you can tell them is, instead of saying you're a minority, what you actually are is your alternative. Because alternative is the umbrella term for people who are actually into things that mainstream culture does not promote and does not naturally say that you should be into, and does not push to society. So I think that that's a good portion of discussing what diversity actually means. From there, of course, if you're here, hopefully you know what Lolita fashion is. And I know that we've had other panels throughout the day. So I'm hoping that you checked out those other panels that came on before me so you have an idea of what Lolita is. I don't want to be repetitive. So because of that, I am going to assume that these viewers know what Lolita fashion is, that it stemmed from the 80s, that while we're in this weird period where Lolita in Japan has a really alternative counterculture meaning, but here in America, that can really be tangled off because people focus on how much money these items are, and people focus on the frivolous part of it, and they focus on discussing the most expensive items they bring. I hope you can see this. Brand whore. That happens a lot. And also people focus on the most expensive restaurants or museums or tea parties or conventions and rooms that they can have. And focusing on showing off your wealth in the fashion, it really takes away from what's going on in the counterculture side. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the counterculture part for a moment. I'm sure that some of the other panels might have discussed that, but I'm just going to quickly mention it since we are talking about overall diversity in Lolita. Over in Japan back in the 80s, and still to today, unfortunately, their gender roles are very strict. We're not perfect in America. We're not perfect in Western culture, but we're a little bit better than Japan because Japan still has these very, very strict rules of what they think a man should do, what a woman should do. And if you're like me and genderqueer, which means that you feel fluid and you don't feel that you identify with one gender, but that you can flux between the genders, or you are some other identity under the trans umbrella, that they don't even address us over there. Yes, here in the United States, we are still not valued and we still are not cherished, but we're allowed to have our own voices here in America. So those who are doing for us, by us, which will be something I'm talking about a little bit later in the presentation, that there's at least some sort of visibility. And, you know, we're visible enough that some of these people who are conservative, Christian, traditional people hate us. So over in Japan, they pretend like we don't even exist. So the gender roles are very, very strict over there. And when you come in with Lolita, something that is definitely not naturally attractive for men, and something that is so bombastic, it wasn't really focusing on this brand has a $1,000 dress, go and buy it. And look, I can afford $1,000 dresses. That's how well off I am. Oh, tea party's coming and you have to spend $500 just to get a ticket. Look, I have enough money to spend $500 on a ticket, and I can spend extra $300 to get in. And then when I get in, I'm going to spend about $600 worth of merch. There is that part to it, but a lot of it, especially back in the 80s, is showing, hey, I am alternative or counterculture because I don't like these strict gender rules of what a woman should do by having a wife and having kids. And if I'm working, I'm still not head of household, the man is, and the men should just be working and they should be the breadwinners, and they're the ones able to get all this education, to get all these certificates, because they're allowed to be curious about professional things, but you aren't. And with that, saying, hey, we don't like that, and we're going to dress in this bombastic way to counteract that and say, we matter, that's really great. And that's a part of the Lolita community's history. It doesn't translate to here, because here in America that never happened, because I think our gender roles are better. But that's a little tidbit about a little bit of diversity in Lolita, on the Lolita side of things. So we talked about diversity in general and what that means. We didn't talk about what Lolita is, but we talked about an example of how Lolita has history and roots of what I would like to call, instead of diversity, inclusion. Let me talk a little bit why I like the word inclusion instead of diversity, and then we'll go on to the next portion of this presentation. I like calling things inclusive instead of diversity, because inclusive has a definition of, you guessed it, the word include. So that means that people are being visible, people are being seen, people are being respected for what they say they are, and they are not being ignored, and they're not being told that that doesn't exist, or that, oh, you're pushing XYZ, how dare you do that? Just let everything be calm. It's not doing that. It's saying we are a vast range of people and identities, and let's talk about them all. Whereas diversity is saying that there is a standard, and then outside of the standard, then there are other things. And let's make sure that the standard is not the only thing there. And I don't like that, because here in America, the standard is you're white, you're cisgender, which means that you identify with the gender of your sex was determined at birth. You usually make a certain amount of money, so you're middle class, maybe higher in America, and that you are straight, so you are only attracted to the opposite mainstream gender that they identify with, and that you're going to have the kids, the 2.5 fence lawn, and you're going to just go along with what they deem as normal. So I don't like that diversity insinuates that this whole 2.5 picket fence thing is the norm. Why can't I be the norm, right? Why can't somebody who is from Asia be the norm? So that's why I like to discuss things by saying inclusive instead of diversity, even though the panel says diversity. And I just like to make that distinction, because a lot of times people don't really take the initiative to think about the difference. So with that, we're going to move on to a little bit of something that I said earlier. I came up close to the camera and I said, for us, by us, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. We're going to talk about that now. Now, with this, we have a lot of different things going on in Lolita when it comes to what you see. Unfortunately, if you are a lover of the original brands, if you are a lover of Japanese brands that are indie or a little bit lesser known than the original brands, and you just love Japanese stuff, period, you are going to get a completely different visual of Lolita than if you check out these independent brands that are from the West. Because even if you go to top. I don't know how to say this right. I apologize if I pronounce it wrong. Taibo. Tubbo. I don't know how to say it. If you go on to Taibo, I'll type it. I'll type it in the chat because I don't know how to say it. Okay, there it is. So if you go to the Chinese market, it pretty much, in my opinion, reflects the Japanese. So that's why I like to compare the two, the Asian side versus the Western side. It's completely different. Unfortunately, since the beginning to current, in my opinion, everyone has a different opinion, right? But in my opinion, the marketing of showcasing the gorgeous clothing that they create is only one certain way. The sizing for the gorgeous clothing they make is, for the most part, one sort of way. The price points of buying those gorgeous clothing is one sort of way. And it's just really problematic. It's problematic because Japan knows that there are people outside of their country that buys this fashion. At this point, we're no longer in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s where the internet was either inaccessible for people that didn't have the money, or the people had the internet, but there wasn't Google Translate. There was no apps for converting yen into other currencies. There was very little shopping services and things of that nature. So it was a little bit more understanding that they just didn't have an idea of what was going on. But we're at the stage where these Asian companies have been flown to America, to Europe, to, I think some had some in Mexico or South America and other countries. So they know that this is a worldwide phenomenon. They know, based on who responds to their Twitters and social media, that it is a worldwide phenomenon. Yet still to this day, we are only seeing on the Asian side and the originator side of Japan models that are probably translated to small. And if they're medium size for America, that's pushing plus size for them. And you'll have people of a certain height. You'll have people with certain style of makeup, certain style of ability to stand and posture in a certain way without needing adaptive technology around them. Adaptive technology, if you don't know, is the correct term, not a fancy term, but the correct term to discuss people that need canes, people that need wheelchairs, people that need scooters, people that need a cane, any sort of technology to keep going and to live their lives. So with the whole do it yourself, we have seen that people have been writing to these companies saying we need bigger sizes. People have been telling them when they come to these conventions, we need bigger sizes. People have been telling them when you come to the West at a convention and you do your fashion, that we need more than the Asian people who live in America and more than the white people who live in America. And we definitely need more than the skinnier people who live in America to do these runways at the conventions. And they have told people that, oh, I love this item, but I can't afford it. It's too expensive. However, they have not really changed. I am obviously not from Japan. I have unfortunately never visited. It is something that I want to do. However, I have heard, since I am into the culture, the saying that over in Japan, being different is not celebrated. And that's another reason why this community has roots in diversity. They're like, well, we are going to be that hammer that I've heard in sayings that's going to get we're going to be that needle, or I forget the specific word, but we are going to be that which is going to be hammered down. And we're going to fight as you try and hammer us down to be normal. So it's kind of annoying because they know what it's like on their end, but they still feel with, I think, that culture of, okay, we hear all these things, but we're not going to do it for the most part. So when I talk about how here in America, the gender identity part, which is the trans umbrella section, is at least somewhat visible, where it's very hush hush, still not talked about, and a lot of people in Japan just don't know about it. It is because here in America, we have done it ourselves. I think that this panel could really only be 5 minutes long, and it would be complete, because to me, for someone who's been looking at the fashion since about 2003, 2004, and has been consistently wearing it on a regular basis since 2012 and buying it regularly since 2012, things have only really improved by us doing for us. And that as technology expands, where we're able to do more, then the inclusion of different identities and minorities in Lolita is going to increase. And I know that when it comes to this, just like the reflection in the real world, people can have this idea of, why do I have to be the one to do it? Why do I have to be the one to bring this up, create this new event, etc.? Why can't we force the people who we are looking at as in charge or in cahoots, or as in Lolita, the brands? Why can't we make the brands do it and not us? Well, my answer is that they've had decades, more than 10 years to do this. And if they are not doing it after 10 years, they probably don't care. It's that plain and simple. You can fight as long as you want for it, but if they don't want to do it, they're not going to. And because they're the ones that were here since the 80s or the 90s, or they just started up, but they are still considered more as the top tier because they are in that country, then they're the ones in power of it. So what I want to leave you with is that inclusion is very important in Lolita. We're not going to get it from the brands that we want to. And because we're not going to get it from them, our main focus should be, if you are someone who's a part of a minority or multiple minorities, get the courage to go out there and start doing things yourself. Continue to post on the social medias your outfits. If you are creating a brand, continue to learn the ins and outs of getting your credit score right, getting your business loan right, registering your business, creating your plans for your outfits and your distribution, etc. And go ahead and keep doing these blogs, keep writing these articles, keep producing these games, keep producing these low library size charts, etc., and keep telling these independent Western people who listen to us more than the mainstream people, I need these sizing. I want to give you a great example of this. If you don't know them, look up the Western brand called Miss Danger, Missdanger. They created a small sizing, I would call it a sample size, of dresses when they first came out and moved away from just doing accessories, because they started out as an accessory only brand. And now they have, as of this video, the same dresses, but they added 13 different sizes. I'm not exaggerating. 13 different size ranges right now you can buy. Not only that, they have a payment plan for most of these dresses. So they have listened to people like me who messaged them saying, I would love to buy this dress, but I don't fit it. and they listened to their consumers. They expanded the sizing. They offered options that make it more affordable. Now, those payment plans are still $205, $300 because their work is very intricate and it's very expensive dresses, but it's still a payment plan. So it's annoying because I know people like when other people do things for themselves or other people respect them enough to expand stuff, but not all brands are going to be like the Japanese brand Metamorphose. I would even say, I'm going to pronounce this wrong again, but Manasama's brand Moite. I don't know how to say it again. Sue me. But I would also say maybe Angelic Pretty is listening to us a little bit too. Not all Japanese brands are going to start slowly expanding. Metamorphose has always been more plus size friendly, and they recently added actual same item but under the plus size range. Those are wonderful, but those are far and few between. And honestly, we are all people that have lives. We all can be busy. I believe that it is so much better to spend time of your day doing things that are productive instead of hate doing things because you are forcing yourself to make people do things because you want other people to do things because you can't control them. So I think that diversity in Lolita is important because there's so many different things that are us, but the only way that our stories are going to be told are telling them ourselves in whatever way, fashion, media, social media, visualizations that you have. And I want to tell y'all, a lot of people can be like, I'm shy, I'm nobody, or I don't have enough money, or oh my God, I'm 40, or oh my goodness, I don't know if anyone else is around here that has autism, or I'm the only person around here that has, say, ADHD, or I have a hearing issue. And so my conversations aren't going to be as smooth as people that are able-bodied. It can be scary at first, but know that the people who respond to you negatively don't matter. You're doing this to connect to your fellow community of identities that you are talking about. And maybe you're inspiring other people that have different minority identities to say, look, that person that's a minority is doing this. Maybe I can do this with my particular instances. So it can be scary, but there's no other way to expand this because we've already been shown that the Japanese and also the Chinese side, sadly, are not in it to expand that to match what their audience is matching. So I feel like that is a good stopping point for the panel. We started a little bit late, so I want to end it a little bit late so I have my time together. So I want to see if anyone in the chat has any questions about what I discussed. I'll wait a few minutes. And if anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask. Pretend that the music of the intro is in right now. Okay, so nobody has questions. That's perfectly fine. I hope that means that you understood the flow of my presentation. I hope that means that my explanations made sense to you. And I hope that if you are somebody watching that isn't a minority, or you're somebody that only has maybe something like, oh, I'm poor, so I just have financial issues, but everything else, I'm pretty much mainstream, that this gives you some insight into what it's like to be somebody that has different minorities and how it is in the Lolita fashion. And one way that you can support is like these people that are inclusive, comment on their stuff, buy their items, buy their projects, share their work, because you also have the ability to help change things. And with that, I'll end my panel. Again, I'm Justin King. You can actually find me on YouTube and Facebook with that ID. It's JESSINKING. It's all just one word together. Over on the YouTube, I typically dress in Lolita, but I don't talk about Lolita a lot. My focus is more talking about what it's like to be in the goth subculture and being Black, what it's like to be mind getting tongue tied, what it's like to be disabled in America and Black, and also to share Black owned brand products, which I have actually a few videos up where I have discussed Black owned Lolita brands that I bought from, such as Moss Badger or Unre Designs or Ichigo Black, and how I like their products. So that's a little bit of Lolita content. I do a little Lolita content through the items that I buy. And yeah, that's me. Thank you so much again, Audrey, for allowing me to be a panelist at the Digital Arisu Fashion Market. I want to say to everyone that Corona is still going on. It's not dead. It's just that a lot of places are reopening up because they can't stay closed forever. So having a digital panel is very appropriate, very safe, and very awesome. And I'll turn it over to Audrey right now. Bye, Twitchland.